you. Hi, I'm Mary Lou. I'm a graduate student in applied physics at Yale. I'll be facilitating this session of our meeting. And so I guess without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker, who is Dr. Simon Sponberg from Georgia Tech. He is an assistant professor in physics at Georgia Tech. He earned his PhD in integrative biology from UC Berkeley in 2008, and his research interests are in neuromechanics, locomotor control, multi-scale physics of the muscle, maneuverability, and computational neuroscience.
Okay, my name is Simon Sponberg. I'm going to represent this collection of faculty from Georgia Tech and talk to you about the best practices that we've been developing. But I also really want to thank everybody for participating in this, because I'm looking forward to learning a lot about the other best practices that we can incorporate into our programs. So the first program that I want to highlight is our REU program, which has really been led by Jennifer Curtis here on the right, who's a professor in our department. And she's really sort of established a new kind of program where we don't try and use GPA as a threshold, and we try and recruit students in very early by creating special projects for them with their faculty mentors that they can do even after their second year of undergraduate. And this allows us to have a lot more continuity throughout. We also try and recruit a diverse enough cohort such that no one minority group is a minority within the cohort. We also have had a very good couple of staff members who've been involved with this that gives the students over the summer a contact point that's not a faculty member, so they don't feel any judgment if they're having any issues with the program or in living in a new place or adjusting to a new environment. We also have these welcoming events that we do, including just simple things like a welcome poster that can feel them like they then belong more into the community that they're coming into. And we've had a number of things where we've tried to develop local contacts with HBCUs and other local institutions for recruitment. And this allows for really a development of a relationship that can then continue on beyond the actual REU program, which is one of always the problems with these REU programs, is that people sort of come and then they leave and it drops off. So we're trying to continue that along in that case. The second program where we've had a lot of success is generating these VIP teams, or vertically integrated projects. This is a program that I've led here at Georgia Tech, where we've created a living dynamical systems team. And these teams, what this is it's a research experience that's integrated into the actual curriculum at Georgia Tech. And what that means is that not only is it a class that they can take, but it's a class that actually counts for major credit in a variety of different majors. And this allows students to engage with research in a way where they don't have to do extra work or volunteer their time in order to do real meaningful research experiences. In the first 7 years of this program, we've had 75 students go through it, representing 12 majors, although most of the research that's being done involves biophysics. There's a couple of nice things about this, where we have a formalized application process, so the students don't have to network ahead of time in order to get into the research experience. They can just go to the web page and apply. And we've also had a lot more accessibility to it because it leverages the large infrastructure. There's actually many VIP teams here on campus. It's a system that was set up in engineering, but we're using it now for sciences. And it gives this sort of tiered mentoring where we have a lot of undergraduates involved in it. And this program has actually led to a number of undergraduates being involved in a paper. So the first paper from this program has just come out, where we've been doing these perturbations of the oscillations of hawk moths to sort of test whether insects operate around resonance. And Ryan Gemalier here was the lead undergraduate from the team, and you can see that the VIP team was actually an author on this forthcoming paper, and all the members of it were down here. So we had 12 undergraduate authors on this paper. The last thing that we've been doing is having a variety of involvement, both from the faculty, where we do community and education support, and from student-led groups, the Graduate Association of Physicists, and especially our Women in Physics community. And this has created a lot of on-the-ground sort of community involvement, where we have both mentorship, active learning opportunities like this Lunch and Learn program, new introductory classes for people outside of physics coming in, demystifying physics for them and making it more relevant to their majors, and providing leadership and direct mentorship for new graduate students. So those are the things that we've done here at Georgia Tech. I'm looking forward to hearing what all y'all have done at the other institutions. Thank you.
Awesome, great. And yeah, we'll have a discussion at the end, so we'll just go to the next flash talk. Speaking next is Dr. Arpita Upadhyaya so Arpita received her PhD from the University of Notre Dame and then worked at the Department of Mechanical Engineering at MIT before being awarded an MIT Pappalardo Fellowship in the Department of Physics. She spent a year in the Department of Cell and Developmental Biology at UNC Chapel Hill before joining the UMD faculty in 2006. She received a Sloan Research Fellowship in 2008 and was promoted to Associate Professor in 2014. Her research uses quantitative imaging, biophysical measurements, and computational analysis to study cellular mechanics and the physical forces that enable a cell to sense and respond to its physical environment, in particular cells of the immune system and cancer cells.
Hello, I'm Arpita Upadhyay, professor in the Physics Department and the Institute for Physical Science and Technology at the University of Maryland, College Park. Today I will talk about some of the efforts in diversity, inclusion, and equity at the University of Maryland that we have been involved in. The faculty and their lab members that comprise Physics of Living Systems Student Research Network have been engaged over the years with ongoing multiple efforts at UMD aimed at enhancing diversity and bringing inclusiveness. Many of these efforts have been student-led. These activities are varied and span several stages across the pipeline. Some are long-standing efforts aimed at reaching middle and high school students, while others are geared towards minority undergraduate student outreach. Physics is Fun activity is a series of free public lecture demonstration programs geared towards a high school and middle school audience and aims to educate and entertain on a wide variety of fun topics in physics. The Physics of Summer Girls program is long-running and comprised of 1 to 2 week sessions focusing on various topics in physics for rising 9th grade students and 10 to 12th grade students. Topics ranging from classical physics to modern physics to biophysics. Typical activities involve hands-on experiments, lab tours, fun physics demos, diverse talks, workshops on communicating science, and most importantly, a community building activities helping these students to build skills, knowledge, and create a sense of belonging within the physics community. Local area high schools in Prince George's County have a large proportion of URM, and so these activities provide a natural mechanism of outreach and broadening participation in physics. There's also an amazing initiative that is graduate student-led, the Grad Map program, Graduate Resources Advancing Diversity and with Maryland Astronomy and Physics. It's several students and PoLS affiliated faculty members have been engaged in this. The program involves fall collaborative seminar series, which includes visit to local HBCUs and MSIs, as has been listed over here, an open house of research, a week-long winter workshop that initiates students into hands-on research, and finally a summer scholars program which allows students an in-depth research experience with several groups. This also provides graduate students with an opportunity to mentor students and meaningfully engage in a program that improves diversities. This provides undergraduate students an exposure into various topics into physics. At a larger scale, UMD has partnered with NIST to provide professional and networking activities for regional minority serving institutions. There's the Conference for Undergraduate Underrepresented Minorities in Physics, the CU2 MIP. There's been a few of these events in the past, and there's another upcoming one in January 2021. This allows undergraduate students to participate in a professional level conference, connect with others in physics, with whom they can share experiences, get advice and ideas. And this allows to create and foster networks for underrepresented minority students and allows them to get into research collaborations, think about how to address social injustice issues. And this conference also raises awareness and explores professional opportunities. The PoLS network at UMD is planning to participate in this conference in 2021 to introduce modules on physics of living systems. In summary, PoLS network at UMD is engaged in a number of efforts at all stages, including the ones I talked about, and we would like to further expand connections with local K-12 schools, and we'd like to partner with other PoLS nodes to enhance our efforts to be more inclusive. Since we work at the intersection of physics and biology, this may broaden students' perception and make entry into physics and STEM fields more widely accessible and equitable for students from all underrepresented groups. Finally, I'd like to thank some of the people listed here that I've been having recent discussions with, and look forward to continuing to work with everyone and get new ideas on how to increase diversity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Dora Noble from Yale University. In her current role as Associate Director of the Program in Physics, Engineering, and Biology, and of the Integrated Graduate Program in Physical and Engineering Biology, Dora develops, implements, and manages a variety of interdisciplinary research programs and initiatives. She has considerable experience in mentoring undergraduate and graduate students, writing and managing grants to support interdisciplinary training initiatives, student recruiting, organizing research, teaching and career-related events, and leading science outreach efforts. She especially loves working with students. Dora has a BA in biochemistry from the College of Worcester and a PhD in molecular biophysics and biochemistry from Yale University.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dora Noble, and I'm really excited to share with you how we at Yale have grown equity, inclusion, and diversity in PoLS and in STEM. So one of the ways has been through our NSF research experiences for undergraduates, or REU site, that Corey O'Hearn and I co-lead. And the goals of this program are to bring to Yale undergraduates with limited access to research, but who are very interested in research, to be able to conduct 10 weeks of summer research at Yale. And we, of course, work with them to improve their professional development skills, such as presenting. And this is a great way to increase diversity in STEM. Since 2009, we have had close to 120 participants, and roughly half of them were underrepresented in STEM. And Yale PoLS faculty have really done a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of mentoring these students, who, as far as I know, have gone on to STEM jobs and STEM careers, all of them, with roughly 2/3 having gotten their PhD or MD PhD. And so how do we do this? How do we have a successful REU site? Well, one thing that's important is to have a strong recruiting plan in place so that students are aware of our program and how to apply for it. So the two conferences, SACNAS and Abercrams, are a great place to recruit. We also have a strong mentoring plan in place. So we have mentorship that lasts beyond the end of the program. And we also offer training on inclusive mentoring for all of our mentors. Individual research projects are important for our students so that they can have project ownership. And we have a robust evaluation component so that we know what we're doing well and where there are areas for improvement. And if you're not familiar with the Student Assessment of Learning Gains instrument, I encourage you to check it out here. It's a really great resource. And finally, we have a lot of professional development workshops and activities for our students. They especially love the career series and being involved in science outreach to be able to give back and really inspire the next generation. So I want to make sure to remind you that if you have an active NSF award, you can apply for an REU supplement. You don't need an NSF REU site for that. And supplements are a great way to diversify in STEM. Finally, for science outreach, we work frequently with New Haven public school students. One platform that has worked really well has been to give short talks, followed each by a very engaging hands-on activity. And students have really liked this way of learning about research. And sometimes some of these activities have turned into standalone modules that comprise part of the Pathfinder summer program curriculum. And this is a program that prepares inner city students to succeed in college preparatory high schools. And some of the modules we have developed have been the physics of collision, biological properties or physical properties of biological polymers, and constructing and controlling circuits, where in addition to an introduction to electronics, they're introduced to programming. And all of these modules are available on our website here. So I look forward to leveraging the strengths of the PoLS network to grow PoLS in STEM and disseminate and share our resources. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dora. Next, we have Keith Harmon. Keith Harmon is a director of the Meyerhoff Scholars Program at UMBC, which Science Magazine has called the gold standard for how to diversify the U.S. academic research community. To date, more than 500 Meyerhoff scholars have earned PhD, MD, or joint MD-PhD degrees, and UMBC leads the nation in African American undergraduates who go on to earn MD-PhDs. Harmon has worked to support students in higher education for 21 years, including through the Meyerhoff program and maximizing access to research careers MARC program. He focuses on refining and advancing best practices for undergraduate STEM success and implementing effective approaches with partner institutions across the nation. Harmon is originally from Georgia. He earned a Bachelor's of Music and Piano Performance from Jacksonville University and a Master's of Music and Piano Performance from the Jacobs School of Music at Indiana University, Bloomington. He is currently pursuing a doctorate in language, literacy, and culture at UMBC.
Good afternoon. I'm Keith Harmon. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm here to share a bit more about the Meyerhoff program, a high-level overview. Our program was began by our president, Freeman Hrabowski, who was then in another position at the institution, but had attended Hampton University, a historically black college and university, and had this idea of strong self-worth, and had a chance meeting with the Baltimore area philanthropist, Robert Meyerhoff, and they began what is now a 32-year experiment in diversifying STEM. And so our program began in '88. First group of students came in '89. They were African-American men from the state of Maryland. Women joined the program in 1990, and in '96, the program was open to all high-achieving students across the nation, regardless of race or ethnicity. Looking to design the program, Freeman looked to the literature, and what did the literature say about the challenges underrepresented minorities were having in college and universities across the nation? So, of course, low expectations, cultural isolation, not having a group of peers, looking at the advising the students were getting in STEM, practical applications to the coursework and experiential learning. And so the program was designed looking at what were many of the challenges students were experiencing. So again, we're here to help students, predominantly underrepresented minorities, but all prepare for terminal degrees in STEM, PhD, or the combined MD-PhD. And that's around advising, social and moral support, and other kinds of enrichment experiences. I'll park here. I think if there's a big takeaway from my flash talk, it's really this slide, because these are the components, these are the mechanisms by which we think the largest change happens. And our program is founded upon this idea of high expectations, that if you're a 4.0 student, a 3.0 student, or a 2.5 student, or a 2.0 student, we communicate that we believe you can do your best. We want you to do your best, be your best, and we have high expectations for students. But we don't simply stop there. A lot of it is really about high levels of support. It's one thing to expect and leave it there. It's another thing to have high expectations and then to support and resource students in a very high way. And that's also what we do. I believe also our evaluators tell us that, and our alumni also tell us that their defining experience as a Meyerhoff Scholar is the 6-week pre-freshman bridge program. And that gets a lot of attention. And so for 6 weeks, they're with us. We're helping them understand the expectations of STEM, of the Academy, of Meyerhoff, helping them understand they're not coming to the 13th grade, but to a new challenging academic environment, and helping develop the sense of community, this cohort model, which is also very strong. A little bit about some indicators of success. 99% of Meyerhoff freshmen will continue in a STEM major beyond their freshman year. 95% of folks who come to us, come through our bridge program, will leave UMBC with the STEM degree. Average GPA for all of our students, about 250. In the spring semester was a 3.55. We have Goldwater scholars, Phi Beta Kappa folks, Tau Beta Pi inductees, UMBC valedictorians, and some other data there. And our evaluators do tell us that African American Meyerhoffs are 5.3 times more likely to enroll in graduate study than African Americans who declined our offer and went to other universities. This was mentioned in my intro, but I'll just cover it really quickly. We are the #1 predominantly white institution in the nation sending African Americans on who graduate and complete PhDs in STEM. Howard is the #1 institution overall, historically Black college and university, but then again, you'll see UMBC is #2. And you'll see again, right below them are, again, leading the pack are another group of historically Black colleges and universities. And I think we need to get to #9, actually 10, with University of Florida is the next predominantly white institution who's leading, and then back to Morehouse and College Park and others. With the MD PhD, we are the #1 institution across the nation who sends Black students on who complete the combined MD PhD by a factor that's quite high. And again, we can talk about why that is. I think it really has a lot to do with students' exposure to research very on, and I think it also has a lot to do with helping them understand the pathway very early on and be prepared for it. I say that because I say this. Here's a young woman who's a Black MD PhD who did not know what this was when she started college, right? And so it always it sings back to me that there is so much potential, that there are students who have the ability, who have the capability, and do not know that these pathways exist if we don't help them get that information and help expose them to it. And again, 7 years after this experience, she's talking about what she learned at my Meyerhoff family who told me what an MD PhD was. And again, I'll harken back to our summer bridge program. This is another young man, Jamal, who finished at Hopkins Computer Engineering, who again, another Facebook post at the end of a PhD, just struck me that they both went back to their summer experience on those days of finishing those PhDs and reflected on the impact of those experiences in giving them direction and focus even 5 to 7, 8 years beyond UMBC. Okay. And again, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. We really talk a lot about inclusive excellence at UMBC. Our president loves this quote that excellence is never an accident. The work that we're doing at institutions has to be intentional. It has to have effort. It has to have intelligent execution. And I love and appreciate being a part of this meeting today because these conversations are what brings that work to the forefront of the institutions. Thank you very much.
Our last speaker in this session is Margie Dieter, who I think everybody knows now. But Dr. Dieter has been the program manager for the Physics of Living Systems Student Research Network since the spring of 2016. While no longer involved in research, her past studies focused on extracellular matrix and its role in cell differentiation. She graduated from Rice University with a double major in English and biology and received her PhD from the UT Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences in the Genes and Development program.
Good afternoon, and thanks to all of you for participating in this workshop, and thanks also to Margaret for the invitation to speak. I'm Margie Dieter. I'm the program manager for PoLS. Most of what I do is behind the scenes, but basically I work with faculty to figure out how PoLS can best serve the students, the graduate students in our network. Just as a bit of background, PoLS was formed back in 2009 as a way for biophysics graduate students without a background in biology to connect with each other, share their experiences so they feel less alone in their pursuits, and support each other as they learn biological vocabulary and methods. Students attend annual meetings together and talk with each other during poster sessions or in between talks, and also meet during APS or biophysics dinners, summer school programs, and other PoLS events. The part of my job that is really fun is talking with students about their research or something else that they find interesting. I also really enjoy seeing students from different schools talking with each other at our get-togethers. And the very best part is when these students realize that they have some knowledge that can help each other and they initiate a collaboration. Most of the collaborations that come about in our program aren't faculty driven, they come from the students, and that's really what we want from the program. When the network was formed, the focus was on getting the program up and running. Who are the participating nodes? Where are the meetings being held? How do we hold workshops and summer programs? leaving diversity to be managed in an informal way. Currently, some of the IPOLS nodes have programs in place to support underrepresented students. Some work with high school students and teachers, and some have other ways to help. I think we all realize that we could do more, and I'm excited that both faculty and students feel strongly about increasing diversity in this program and in STEM. Our goal is to make some specific structured changes in the program that will be effective in increasing diversity. This meeting is a step on that path. Trying to tackle this issue might feel a little like trying to eat an elephant. There is so much to do, and the problem can feel overwhelming. If we can just start taking bites, that's the only way we're going to eat that elephant. I encourage us all to think about how we'll start, what changes we can make now, and remember that we already have one support system in place, our Student Research Network. Our network is designed to support students. In your own nodes, minority students can connect with students at seminars, journal clubs, lunch and learns, any of your activities. If your student needs to learn a technique, they can go visit another IPOLS lab and learn from the people who do it every day. That will also build connections and help them feel supported. We can make changes, and we can use the strength of the IPOLS network to do that. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So now I'd like to open it up for discussion. We have 25 minutes. We have until 2:25. So yeah, I'd like to encourage you all to ask questions and talk about the flash talks that we've just watched.
Let me make just one comment here. I think it's a good place to start. It's going to end up with the final discussion. But one thing, like Creston said when you opened the meeting, is that we want to come with some actionable items that the PoLS network can do. So if people can put that on their discussion base, what we should be doing, where should we put the resources we have? There's a lot of questions. If we get more resources, what can we do? The question is, I want to put an easier question. What can we do with the resource we have? And then if that works, we can ask for more resource. So people can put a little bit more a plan of action together with the discussion. I would appreciate that. That's what we want to try to achieve by the end and actually get something by integrating the nodes. You just heard what Margie said. That's where we want to go in that direction. And we don't want these things to be a top-down approach. So we really would like to hear from the young people what they want, what they think will work. Thank you.
Great, that's a good idea. We have a question in the chat from Dr. Levine. This question is to Dr. Harmon. Have other schools tried to clone the successful UMBC approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. Happy to share. So a number of schools have done bits and pieces over the years, but never sort of the full complement of programming, and also followed sort of our model and ethics or approach to advising and working with students. But more recently, yes, Chapel Hill has the Chancellor Science Scholars Program. Penn State has the Millennium Science Scholars Program. Those replication efforts were funded by HHMI. We're now working with two schools on the West Coast funded by CZI, the Chan Zuckerberg Institute Initiative. At Berkeley, there's the SEED Scholars Programs. And at UCSD, there's the PATHS Biology Science Scholars Programs. And so Chapel Hill and UNC have graduated cohorts. They're being very successful. Berkeley is in their first year this fall. And I have an article that we published in Science that gives you some information about those replication efforts and also some data. And I'll put that in the chat right now.
And not everyone has Freeman Hrabowski as the president, so
right,
this is a bit of a problem.
Well, and that's exactly one of the reasons the replication efforts were funded, because many folks said, well, how can you do this without a Freeman? How can you do this if you don't have a Black president, right? And so,
no, it's not the Black president. His charisma is just off scale. So
no, I hear you and I understand. And so a part of it is, right, getting your senior leadership to buy in, because there is significant commitment needed to make these programs happen. And really what's at the base here is it's about institutional and cultural change. which takes a long time to do, right? But it's getting people on board to understand it's the right thing to do. Had more time, I'd share something with you. There's a wonderful slide we have about how Meyerhoff had changed the culture of UMBC by increasing scholar programs across disciplines, how people across disciplines interact, support, engage, teach, support students. And so I think that's the power of the Meyerhoff model, is that it is replicable and it can be adapted to different disciplines and really impact how campuses think about supporting their students.
Great. Joshua Shavitz has his hand up.
So I had another question for Dr. Harmon. I love the Meyerhoff program. We have an awesome graduate student who came from you guys here at Princeton, and he is in my group, and he's totally fantastic. I think, you know, it's wonderful to think that we could all work with our administrations to make large initiatives like what you guys have, and I'm all for trying that. You know, success probability is stochastic, perhaps, but in terms of the PFCs and the IPOLD nodes, we're sort of little groups of enthusiastic, you know, like-minded people. And so I guess, are there take-home messages that I can boil down from your guys' experience that we might be able to implement like on a micro scale, the kinds of things that we actually have kind of direct influence and control over?
I'd say I think many of you are on the right track and are doing it, I'm sure. Based on what I heard in the flash talks, you know, a big part of what we do in our program is we help students contextualize failure, right? Scientists fail quite regularly. And from the very beginning, we're helping students realize and have comfort with failure, as opposed to, I didn't do well, I'm out of this major, I'm looking for something else. And so a lot of the things you're doing, working with students in small groups, helping them understand that, demystifying the pathway, demystifying all of these things about STEM, the things that we never tell students. And I get a sense from what I'm hearing that many of your programs on small group level are doing that and connecting people. I love this idea someone said about the iPolls, that, you know, you can send someone to another group to learn a technique or learn something that's not available in their lab. And it's connecting people across communities, across silos, and helping them leverage knowledge. And I think the more you do that, the more you empower students to do that broadly. So I think from what I'm hearing, the group is on it. And it's embedded in many of the things that I hear you saying and doing. But those are some. I mean, I think those are sort of our takeaways. It's demystification, contextualizing failure and success, and helping people understand the pathway and help them construct a scientific identity for themselves through their experiences. That's really that's at the heart what we do.
I was wondering if I could ask the other PoLS nodes folks, did y'all have challenges in starting your programs? Or are there things that you have learned that you would pass along to other people who might be interested in starting?
If I can add something to discussion, and probably Keith can also comment on it. I think we have our ideas, and I think some of them work. You heard from the people from the Houston Community College, you heard from the University of Houston, you heard all that. But recruiting is always a challenge. How we inspire people from a community that's not used to being to the science and show that's a path to success. You know what I mean? In a sense, that's not something that's on the environment they grow up. They haven't been exposed to that. So one of the difficulties we had, for example, even recruiting, is that basically some of our underrepresented students, we see that many, many cases, they don't even know they can be financially supported to work on science. You know what I mean? So can you give a little, and we are trying to work on it, but I always feel like an eternal amateur doing that. So can you give a little bit more professional guidance to us on how do we actually inspire these people? We put our efforts there, but is there some particular tips that you would like to give to us?
I think it's being transparent. I think it's all about relationship building. And you make a great point. I think it's a part of that demystification, right? When I encounter a student and we're recruiting, I feel like instead of hooking them from Meyerhoff, my job is to help demystify science and STEM and to make them comfortable with the idea of a STEM major so that Meyerhoff becomes an attractive proposition for them. And it's helping them understand, right, a pathway in your career. And do you understand how much support in terms of programming and financial support? It's working with high school partners. It's getting information out to parents. But I will tell you, many of the schools who come to UMBC to recruit students come consistently, develop relationships with our students, and that makes a difference. You know, for a number of years, we sent a number of folks to Dora's program at Yale, and it was about relationship, right? And people from Yale coming to visit and students getting to know them and becoming comfortable, and the word spreading. So I think we have to do that same thing with high school partners, NSBE junior chapters, if there are other kinds of programs that are funded, you know, by NSF that we could touch and get information out to. Students are great at this, of course, right? And so getting, it could be something to look at, how could you utilize and garner some support and energy from your IPOL students.
So that's a great answer. Let me give you a follow-up on that question. When we were trying to build these relationships, Margaret talked a little bit about that with, for the University of Houston and the Houston Community Colleges, and now you're starting our interactions with Texas Southern University. We felt sometimes before we would send our faculty to talk and recruit, but we felt right now that sending our postdocs and students, the young people, to talk to the students first, as being the front of the center and the front of PoLS is more effective. So when you tell about building relationships, how do you see this relationship about sending the senior people versus sending your young people? They can communicate most. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think it's not an either or. I like the combination. A lot of folks, when they come to recruit, will bring graduate students, postdocs. But you know, faculty also have a different perspective. And at the end of the day, students also need to become comfortable seeing faculty show up in those spaces and doing this work, right? And I think we also can't, and I don't think you're saying this, but it's also not the responsibility of these other folks in training to do this work. And so I think we also need to make sure faculty are being included and work with colleagues on campus in terms of language and approach, diversity professionals and other folks on campus. But I think you're on the right path there. But I would also say include the faculty in those. Definitely do take the folks in training though, yes.
I think the one thing that we might, that I might add to this is that I think Joshua was asking if we had things to recommend, challenges that we've overcome. I still feel like we have a lot of challenges that we're trying to overcome. But one of them is that I think has worked in a couple of cases is providing a standard sort of formalized process to then apply for the program. And I don't mean that in place of the relationship building. I think that's really important. But having a clear process about which to go through, especially for getting involved in undergraduate research, because so much of that right now, it's sort of like hiring postdocs. You know, there's not, oftentimes not formal even ads or times that people can go out to apply. So like with the VIP program, having a very standardized process through which anybody can apply, and where there's a single point of contact on a website for that process. That doesn't replace getting the word out, building those relationships, recruiting people to apply for that. But I think it makes it a little more standardized than to go ahead and go through that process. I don't know if anyone else has had that experience or maybe a counterpoint to it. But I've certainly found that if we're just relying on the people who, even if they get the exposure at one point in time and then have to themselves follow up individually and sort of figure out the path to then get in, that creates some barriers that seem to be problematic at times.
I can add a comment to that. One thing that Margaret did that was beautiful and really improved our program big time is not to scare underrepresented students by saying, we are going to check you on your GPA and all the hard classes you took. And we completely change our admission program based on, why don't you work hard on a personal statement? Convince us that you can do something. We are not going to look at your grades, just want to see where you're coming from. Oh, that was a real improvement for our program. And we have some fantastic students that now did great science with us. Now they're in graduate school. Some of us stay in graduate school with us that we never would know in advance if it was not Margaret's way of changing the completely way of recruiting. And I think that's one thing I learned about how much sometimes we scare people in advance, but just by the process, like you said, right? Basically, how do you present yourself? So giving people an opportunity to present themselves, that for me was a learning experience for me. I just observed from outside, but I really learned a lot from it.
So Jose, when these students who had a great experience through this Margaret's vision, so to speak, when they apply to your school for graduate school, you don't look at their GRE is not required, GPA is not. What do you do at that stage? You go personally tell the admission guy, look, admit person X.
That's what I do in my department. I do on the SSPP program. I think that basically I had several cases where I said I personally guarantee that basically if nobody else on the faculty wants this kid, I want it. I just want to give this kid more opportunity. If he or she comes to Rice, they should have a choice to choose who to work for. But I'll personally guarantee that I have a position for that person. Doesn't mean I'll be the only one getting that people. And I think people are starting to up on the idea that basically we had someone that performed well in our program. That's already proof that the person, first of all, can do great on that program. And I think one thing we are learning more and more, and basically these days, is that all these conventional ways of selecting people don't work. Like, for example, success of graduate students in physics and GPA in physics have zero correlation. Yeah. Right? So in a sense is, I think, but what Margaret does is that takes a lot of work when you do these things, because, you know, checking a few numbers and drawing a line is much easier than actually reading statements or doing interview with people and really trying to figure out what's going on. It takes a lot of more energy. So one thing we're trying to work is how do we deal with that course load? Margie can tell you, she's also involved in some of these interviews. It's a lot of personal relationship building in terms of doing that assessment and figure out the people that want to come. And the more I heard on this meeting, basically, you saw the initial statement by Philip Phillips on the situation. Exactly, a lot of these great people that came out from assessment that are non-conventional.
Yeah, I mean, that's something Dr. Limbard emphasized this morning as well.
Okay, I'm going to say time out because we can talk about this more during the CTPP section later on.
Sure.
Can we have another hand up from Caitlin Knapp?
Hi, yes. So this question is pretty much to all of the Flash Talk presenters. The focus has been on the outreach that we can do in terms of mentoring and bridge programs and reaching into high schools, but I wonder if you can speak to any kind of work that you had to do in-house before these programs became successful, any kind of preparatory changes or things that you had to implement in order to create that welcoming space for the students you're reaching out to be brought into.
Someone want to comment on it? That's a good question.
I think I can comment on.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I've already spoken once, so please go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I wanted to say that I think the biggest point that was brought up in some talks earlier also is for the students that are coming in either for short-term workshops and camps or for longer-term, summer camps. A lot of it is about getting a personal relationship with the labs they're working in, with the students they're working with. And so in terms of, for example, in the grad map program at Maryland, it's the graduate students who are the key. And so there is a peer mentoring. Graduate students are working one-on-one with the undergraduate students that are coming in from other institutions and really establishing that point of contact and that mentoring relationship with support from faculty. So I think it needs some adjustment in terms of how people want to open up their spaces and make the students comfortable. And the same with some of the summer scholars. You want to make sure that there are faculty who will create that space, provide the opportunity and time for other students in their group to act as mentors. So I would say that's among the most important things for success.
For us, for the program that's for mostly middle school students, we've had to work with our graduate students to make sure that what they're presenting is accessible to that age group. And so it's actually great because it doubles up as a training, communications training activity for the grad students. And this way, we know that we do practices, and we know that what we're doing is quality, because I think one of the worst things you can do is maybe get a middle school student who's coming to one of these outreach events for the first time and have it be not a great experience. And we're very fortunate because at Yale, we actually have a whole office that's dedicated to working with New Haven area public schools. And that's really great because they can help us arrange to get the right group of students. If we want, say, 20 students from 6th and 7th grade, they can help us do that. They have a program where they essentially, any student identified by the public school teachers can enter this program and then have a lot of different outreach activities within Yale accessible to them. And this has really made our jobs easier because we essentially didn't have to go through the really hard process of, creating specific relationships with the middle school teachers, say, to attract students. That part was already done for us. And so we could really, really just focus on the quality science outreach that we could do. And so that's been really helpful. Another thing for the RAU site has been just having a pilot program and having some institutional support to start that.
What I was going
Go ahead.
What I was going to add was that I think the sort of obvious thing is that you want to have that when people come to the community for the first time, that they feel a sense of belonging and identification with it. And that creates this chicken and an egg problem, right? Without more representation and diversity in the present community, it's difficult to recruit into that. But that means that what we have to do, I think, is, and what I've been taking home from as a take-home message from these discussions we've been having, is that we really need to push both on the belongingness and on the recruitment side in parallel so that they synergize. And I think you can do that in some ways with the REU program. Jennifer made sure that she recruited such that there was never any one group that was in the majority in that cohort of students that was coming in. So that there was always a diversity of representation in that group. So there was some management of that. I think the place where it's been most successful has been in our recruitment of women to the program. Again, this is not something that I had direct involvement with, but our women in physics community made sure that it got together with our admissions committee and made sure that for a couple of years that we when we invited students to campus to interview for admissions to graduate school, they made sure they invited an equal number of men and women. So we usually had more men that were admitted than women, but they only invited to campus an equal representation of that. So when they showed up, it was more represented that way. So there's some ways to sort of, I think, try and create these sort of clusters of better represented groups that then you can try and leverage in that way. But we're still struggling with it a lot in the VIP program. This is something that I'm really trying to work on, and it's been very difficult.
Thanks. We have another hand up, Landry Harumbe.
Hi. I guess I have a question about, I guess, what do these programs see as more important? Essentially, like having an opportunity to develop skills and achieve some sort of a research final product and present at a conference, or do the entire sort of research life cycle, and therefore develop a STEM identity, or to have a sort of a a more inclusive community in that experience. Essentially, have a more a positive experience. Because in my experience, I found the opportunity to like gain programming skills, do some research, and eventually be able to present it to have been the most like motivating and like effective way to have me develop like a STEM identity versus since I'm at the University of Maryland, which is a predominantly white institution, I still think that in those situations, those can be competing values that I just like to know what you guys think about that.
I think in our case, it was maybe a combination. I mean, all of our students have certainly really enjoyed having something to show, and even walking away with some poster. It doesn't really matter how great or how much they accomplish, but just something that they had done in lab that they can share, that gives them project ownership that they feel proud of. At the same time, I think it is important for them to have a cohort. And so I guess I presented in my flash talk the REU supplement possibility, and my only I guess words of warning with that would be just make sure you would have a cohort if you were to accept only one student, because that is really important. And along some of the things that we had discussed prior, we actually have talked with our REU students about the types of mentors that you could have, and how, it's a great thing to not just have one or two mentors, but maybe have 5 mentors, and they can offer different things. And maybe some of them might look like you, but maybe some of them don't look like you. And it doesn't mean that they don't care about your success. They might care just as much. That's why they're here, and it's okay. And I was sort of surprised, but it seemed like a lot of students really resonated with that and really hadn't thought about, who to get as mentors, and that, if they were African American or Hispanic and they had a white mentor, that person would necessarily really care about their success. And so just even having a kind of welcome conversation about this, not to start off the program, but later on, once everybody knows everybody else, that was surprisingly, that went over really well, I guess.
Landry, I can add to that for the Georgia Tech RAU program. Jennifer Curtis here. It's interesting. I mean, I think the reality is every student has different needs, right? And so we try to meet them where their needs are. Some people are ready to go, and it's all about the research, and identity issues or belonging is nothing that matters to them. And so then they're presented with a robust research project to pursue. In fact, everybody is. And then there's others who actually really need some work to sort of feel like they belong, some work to have them sort of figure out how the system works and what the flow is for research. And it's more important to sort of have them leave with the idea that this is something that they part of, that they can be part of, where they belong. And so it's just a question of where the needs are. But I would say I don't think the two things need to be at odds. Everyone comes in and is matched with a good research project. The key then is to not put too much pressure on the students, because they put so much pressure on themselves to have amazing outcomes by the end of the summer. And as we all know, some research goes well, some research doesn't go well. And so to support them and have them see this is part of the research cycle, you can fail or you can succeed. But to mix that experience, the research skills and so forth, with then the other messages that come with, you belong here, this is how this works, you can do this, I think is critical. So they don't have to be working against each other.
Awesome.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you.
Hey everyone. Our first speaker for today is Dr. Charlene Denz. She is the Associate Director of Education and Inclusivity at the Center for the Physics of Living Cells at UIUC. Dr. Denz received her BS in Biochemistry and Molecular Biology from the University of California, Santa Cruz in 2001, and then worked at Genentech Inc. in South San Francisco for 3 years before coming to the University of Illinois to pursue a PhD in biophysics and computational biology. For her PhD research, Charlene used spectroscopic methods to investigate protein stability and dynamics in cell membranes and developed a protein-based system to approximate macromolecular crowding in vitro. Dr. Denz was also an NSF JK-12 fellow, where she worked with K-12 teachers across Illinois to develop inquiry-based science curricula and improve her own teaching skills. After her PhD, Dr. Denz has worked to develop programs and initiatives that serve to support diverse students and young scientists in STEM at all stages of the pipeline. Among these include a middle school science and social justice curriculum to investigate the Flint water crisis, a Spanish language family science program in partnership with SACNA's graduate students, a summer research program for underrepresented high school students in physics and engineering, and more recently, a bridge program in partnership with Fisk University. Dr. Denz has taught at both the University of Illinois Laboratory High School and in the departments of physics and mechanical science and engineering. She returned full-time to work for the CPLC in 2008, where she currently serves as the Associate Director for Education and Inclusivity.
Hello, my name is Charlene Denz. I am the Associate Director of Education and Inclusivity at the Center for the Physics of Living Cells at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Today I'm going to be talking to you about our diversity, equity, and inclusion programming. The organizing theme behind all of our programming is as follows. We work to support diverse scientists at every stage of the pipeline, with particular attention paid to transitions along the pipeline. We not only work to recruit diverse scientists into our programming, but also to retain those scientists, to provide them with the training, the professional development that they need in order to be placed in their chosen field, career field. All of our programs are evaluated and assessed, and that data is used to constantly improve upon our programs. So we have programs at every stage of the pipeline, from elementary school all the way up to junior faculty and scientists. A couple of programs I'd like to highlight are Physics of Life experience for teachers. This brings high school teachers and some lower level teachers into our labs to experience biological physics research and develop innovative curricula for their students. We work with Fisk University, a historically Black college in Nashville, Tennessee, to train their undergraduate students in our CPLC labs and to prepare them for the PhD program here in physics. We have developed Physics of Living Systems education meetings to highlight best practices in teaching in this interdisciplinary field, in science communication, and next year we will work with our Fisk colleagues to highlight best practices in supporting Black scientists in the field. Finally, our signature outreach program is our CPLC Summer School that attracts scientists, graduate students, postdocs from all over the country and the world to come here to learn how to integrate experiment and theory to solve the most important biological physics problems. Again, we have programs that not only work to recruit, but also to train and to place diverse cohorts of students and postdocs. We have an excellent track record with placing the next generation of researchers, particularly in tenure track academic fields, with a 37% placement rate compared to 8% nationally. And this is a very diverse cohort of students and postdocs that we are placing. We also place students in a wide variety of other sectors, including industry and in government. Finally, all of our programs are constantly being assessed, and we usually use that data to constantly improve upon our programming. One data point that we are always looking at with regard to our CPLC Summer School is not only the number of applicants, but also where those applicants are coming from, the universities, the geographical spread, and we are always looking to see whether we are broadening our reach with each consecutive year. We also look at student surveys and student evaluations to see where we may have fallen short in one particular year in order to course correct, and also to build upon our strengths to consistently improve our programming throughout the year. To summarize, the CPLC Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion programs work to support diverse scientists across the entire STEM workforce pipeline. We follow students all the way from recruiting them to placement in their chosen career field. and we are constantly collecting data on our programs and using that data to improve our programming. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you for the short video. And now our second speaker is Professor Jose Anuchik. Professor Anuchik is the Harry C. and Olga K. Wise Professor of Physics and Astronomy and Professor of Chemistry and Biosciences at Rice University, and CPRIT Scholar in Cancer Research. This is the Cancer Prevention and Research Institute of Texas. He's also the co-director of the Center for Theoretical Biological Physics, CTBP, NSF Center that encompasses a broad spectrum of research and training activities at the forefront of the biology-physics interface. He studied at the University of Sao Paulo and the California Institute of Technology, earning his doctorate in 1987. His doctoral supervisor at Caltech was John Hochbild. After postdoctoral studies in Santa Barbara, California, and a brief faculty position returning to the University of Sao Paulo, he moved to the University of California, San Diego in 1990 and joined Rice University in 2011. His major scientific achievements include the theory of tunneling pathways to understand electron transfer in proteins and the creation of the funnel concept that creates a new theoretical framework for protein folding. His research also focuses on genetic networks and modeling the 3D structure of the genome. He received much recognition for his scientific achievements, including the election to the American National Academy of Science in 2006.
I want to talk today about our training program at the Center for Theoretical Biological Physics, CTBP, particularly on the impact that we have on underrepresented groups. I want to say CTBP is a great place for this area because our students and postdocs interact with each other in the same way. And that includes the underrepresented groups, the undergrads together. So this horizontal learning, when you have not only the faculty interact with the students and postdocs, but the postdocs and the students interact with themselves, allowed for a great training for that. As you can see, we are a very diverse community. This is just a list of our postdocs that are now professors everywhere. And just to show here, the reason I'm showing these photos very fast is just so you can have a view of the diversity of the people we train. I think these photos speaks for themselves. But I don't want to talk about postdocs and graduate students. I really want to focus on training undergrads. We have a program called Orbiters. And the Orbiters has two parts. One that's for general training of undergrads, but the most interesting part has to do with our Frontiers in Science program, where we focus on undergrad students coming from underrepresented communities. So for example, we partner with universities like University of Houston, that's a Hispanic serving institution. Same thing for the Houston Community College, and with the Texas TSU, who is a historical Black college. These are paid internships, and we recruit these students that had no idea what they can do in science, and they come to train with us. Let me give you a little bit more of a feeling for this program. As you can see, as I already told you, these students coming from all these different institutions like UH, Clear Lake, that are Hispanic serving institution, Houston Community College that has all different kinds of minorities, the Texas Southern University, a historic Black college university. These are paid internships. And the best thing is every one of our trainees that come from these communities, they have individualized training. That means they have one graduate student or one postdoc that's specially assigned for them. Many of them do this 10 weeks of research during the summer, and then after that they stay with us. We have a retention program. And now this program is being developed in parallel at our new site in Boston at Northeastern University. I want to point out a little bit about this program during the last 5 years. We have a large diverse group. Here's the class of this year, as you can see around here. We had 53 students in total, 16 were women, 22 Hispanic, 5 were African American. I want to comment that basically many scientific articles came from that. These students now, they have been admitted to great graduate school or industrial job, and we have a full data available of that if you want to have a look. But the point it is our kids where this thing has been transformative on their lives. They didn't even know about the possibility of doing research, the idea that research can be paid, and they come to the center. And the best part is we contribute a lot for their lives, but they contribute a lot for the center. They have been great in our success, and we are happy to have them with us. So be glad to talk about more in details during the discussion part. Thank you.
Thank you for that talk. And now our last speaker is Professor Josh Shavitz. Josh is actually my advisor at Princeton, and he's the co-director at the Center for the Physics of Biological Function and a professor at Princeton University with appointments in the physics department and at the Lewis Sigler Institute for Integrative Genomics. He leads research focused on understanding how life emerges from collections of molecules, cells, and organisms, asking how bacterial cells grow, divide, and move, how collections of cells form patterns, and how and why discrete animal behaviors are generated by the brain. Josh completed his bachelor's degree in physics at Columbia University, where he was an II scholar. He received his PhD from Stanford University, where he studied the molecular modus kinesin and RNA polymerase using optical tweezers in the group of Stephen Bloch. He then moved to the University of California, Berkeley as a Miller Fellow, where he focused on the motility of bacteria, including the actin-propelled Rickettsia Mexicococcanthus, and the wall-less Spiroplasma. Josh has been part of the faculty at Princeton since 2007.
Hello, my name is Josh Shavitz. I'm a professor of physics in the Lewis Sigler Institute for Integrative Genomics at Princeton University. I'm also one of the co-directors of our NSF Physics Frontier Center for the Physics of Biological Function. Our center, which we call the CPBF, is a joint partnership between Princeton University and the City University of New York. Like many PFCs, we do lots of different activities, some focused on research, some focused on education and outreach. Our center doesn't administer our own graduate or undergraduate programs, and so we're able to use our resources and our sort of efforts to supplement existing programs on our campuses and more broadly to enhance diversity through our branch of physical science. And we do that focusing three sort of different levels: undergraduate, graduate, and postdoc sorts of opportunities. And I'll take you briefly through each one of those now. So at the undergraduate level, we teach a summer school we've been doing for several years now called the Physics of Life Summer School, geared towards undergraduate physics majors. About half of the students in this program come from the greater CUNY system in New York, which is an extremely large and diverse system all throughout New York City and the boroughs of New York City. Of course, last year we had to go online due to the COVID pandemic. This actually allowed us to reach a much broader set of students. We had about 1,000 students who took our course, which lasted several months throughout the summer. And this really, the representation was worldwide, countries throughout our planet, and it was a really wonderful opportunity to reach students we probably wouldn't have ever reached before. On the graduate student level, our center runs several day-long symposia roughly monthly during the school year. This allows us to focus on specific topics in depth. We host a variety of students who come and visit when we're not in COVID times from the Northeast and all the pole nodes. And this year, what we've done is we've started tutorial sessions for those students who like a little bit of background ramp up before the symposium. And this has been very successful in getting a broader group of students than we've had in the past. About 40% of the students taking the tutorials are URMs. The majority of them come from public institutions. And so we think it's been a really wonderful success. At the postdoc level, we have two fellows programs we're involved in. We have our own fellows, which we can use as a way of increasing the diversity in all the departments that are part of the center. And we have a newly established program called the Faculty Fellows in the Physical Sciences at Princeton, which is a partnership between our Biophysics Center, the Physics Department, the Astrophysics Department, and Geosciences. And the goal is to bring in sort of critical mass, a cohort of new postdoctoral fellows who will both increase the kinds of diverse representations we have in all these programs, but also work on these issues of equity and inclusion with us to make all of our programs more inclusive and a better place for all of us to be. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for that last video. And now we can proceed to the discussion. I want to remind you that there's 3 ways of asking questions. You can either raise your hand or just speak out. You can write it in the chat, or if you prefer to be anonymous, you can write it directly to me and I'll read it out loud. and we encourage everyone to participate, especially students.
Yeah, hi, this is Zan Schulten from the University of Illinois. I have a question for Joshua. You said you had this undergrad symposium, Physics of Life. Do the students come and actually stay there in Princeton when they attend this program? And how do you handle that?
Do you mean the summer school?
Yeah, you had the summer school, right, for undergraduates.
So we house them on campus. It's a small group. It's 24 students. For the CUNY students, of course, it's only a train ride away, so the travel funds are not really necessary. We house them and feed them, etc. So it's cost-free to them totally. In addition, some of the students stay. So normally it's a 2-week program, an intensive 2-week lecture-based program with some hands-on units. And then some of the students, the CUNY students, stay on for an REU for the rest of the summer. There they are housed and fed and also make a small stipend. The students who aren't from the CUNY system, we have some travel funds, but usually we ask that if they have a research advisor, if they can get some help from the university, and we've been able to, one way or another, get all the students onto campus, and then it's cost-free from everyone, for everybody from that point on.
Yeah, thank you. Because for our bridge program to undergraduates, we rely very heavily either on the physics department or the College of Engineering. So it's interesting to see how other people can organize this and not necessarily use your own Frontier Center funds to do this.
Yeah. So most of it is paid from our center funds. It's one of the big items in our budget is the summer school program.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And for that summer school, do you have any modules or something of that nature that maybe you could share with the PoLS nodes? Say, it seems like a great thing, and it's a great way to get undergraduates involved in sort of at the interface of physics and biology type research and get some hands-on experience. So I don't think that's something that maybe is the best to have, an online platform that lots of people can join in, but maybe it's something that other nodes could run or add to it and at least use some like core already developed component.
Yeah, so I like that. So this year everything we did on YouTube, but it was very different. So you can go to the CPF YouTube channel. What we did was we ran, there were research presentations. So every week the presenter, who was a faculty, assigned some papers. Before the lecture, there was a discussion section led by students and postdocs of that PI, where they went over some basics and things. And then the PI came later in the afternoon and gave a lecture about some of that material. So that was this year. It was a combination of sort of like lectures about the material and current research topics. Normally what we do, though, it does combine, we have some sort of fundamental lectures, which are, like how solid mechanics might apply, whatever, et cetera, stat mech, things like this. Mm-hmm. We have labs. We have some problem solving kind of precepts. So it almost looks like an intro physics course, but with biology problems they're solving. Mm-hmm. And then one of the things we do are what we call Day of Science. And it's one topic where we have multiple PIs all working on the same thing. And they come in and talk all day long. And it is utterly fantastic. The students love it because you hear theory and experiment and all these people who are all studying, development in the fruit fly or bacterial biofilm formation. And they get all these perspectives. And I think they really get a sense of the depth of some of the biology topics that physicists can approach. And so that's been very nice as part of our summer school.
That's great. And has it been really easy to recruit faculty participants for this?
It's not been too bad.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good. I mean, it's a really fun program. You just have to find 2 weeks where most of the faculty are still in central New Jersey in the summer, which is not super easy, but it's possible. And it's really fun. So we have lunch with the students and dinner with the students. Like usually the people lecturing that day go. Many of our graduate students and postdocs, like Deanna, help. in various ways, and then they go to lunch. It's just really a fun time.
Got it. Thank you.
We have a question from the chat from Jules ND. She's a student. They're a student. Dr. Shavitz, how do you recruit those students for the summer school and maybe postdoc too?
You can ask directly, Jules, if you have more to elaborate. Since you
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can ask directly.
I don't know. I can't see everyone. Hello.
Hi. Very good talk. I really like the program. So I was wondering, how do you recruit those students for the summer, for the summer school, and maybe how do you, because you said you have a special program for the postdoc, right? So how does it work? Just curious. I don't want to know.
So recruitment, I think, for a lot of these things is the most difficult part. I think a lot of us are very creative and excited about what we do, and if you put students in front of us, we'll go. Everyone on this call will have fun teaching them. So we have been curating email lists and Twitter lists and things of PIs in schools and undergrad directors at different programs everywhere. In fact, I think this is something that I wanted to ask that the iPoLS network could work on as a whole, is making really giant mailing lists that we can reach out to people.
Josh, why don't you save that? Basically, I think on the last discussion we want to come with some actionable items, right? Basically.
Okay, great. So let's make sure we put that on.
That's a good place to summarize all these things and make sure that we move forward on that.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, recruitment is hard. We should work on it because I think that's one of the most interesting problems and where we can make a lot of progress is just exposure and recruiting.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have another student question in the chat from Landry Horenbier. Will REU programs change due to COVID? Does remote mentoring allow for a larger number of students to participate in the program?
I can answer a little bit about our program. The CTB program, since you want to do individual mentoring, it's very hard. So the question for us is really make sure that we have enough graduate students and postdocs. That's always volunteer for the student and postdoc participate, but they all participate in great numbers. So in a sense, that base goes on what Josh just said, how we integrate all these things so we maximize our people and our collaborations based recruiting, who is availability of people to provide training. So for some things, I think we can scale up. That's courses and seminars and things like that. But training still requires someone that follows with the students. And it's a very interesting question because if you bring someone physically to your place, there is a financial cost. And Josh was going to say, basically, that's a big budget, a big item in our budgets. But also there is the fact that you need the personal influence, and for us means limit of students and postdocs, and sometimes that's the limiting factor. So in a sense, we can maximize now the financial costs because we have much less financial costs, but we still have to deal with the fact we want to have give the trainees a personal experience, and that requires to have a student or a graduate student or postdoc that works with them.
Yeah, I would say the same is true at Illinois. We were able to run the physics department REU program virtually this year, and then of course with our FISC program, we were able to run that virtually. But really, it's exactly what Jose said. The limiting factor is really finding labs and graduate students who can really be committed to mentoring the students and projects that are appropriate for the students.
But with all that said, I think we have a great participation for young people. We are trying to increase those numbers, and we try to be more reachable. And I think what Josh is saying, how can we use the entire PoLS network together to sort of mix talent and integrating people, is something I want to put for the next discussion. So I want to put 2 plugs for the next discussion. One is, and people can start to think about it, one is actionable items. And I want to do these actionable items in 2 ways. What can we do with our current resources? If we don't get a penny more from anybody else, what can we do with our current resources? And the other one is, what could we do if we had much more funding, but being honest with the money, not wasteful with the money. Remember, that's taxpayer money, so do the best use out of it. So basically, which are great things that I think people would convince us that we should go forward and try to fundraise for it. But in order to fundraise, you have to have a real good story to tell. So put the two things on perspective. And finally, I really want, and I think we're going to start a discussion with that because several of our students have run the lunch tables. I want to see what the students have to propose, what they would like to have compared to what they have now. So what's their ideas? What worked for them? What didn't work for them? What they would like us to do? So let's try to do a little bit coming out from the young people so we don't have just the old people ideas into the process.
I have a question regarding the pandemic as well. Do you feel like you've been able to reach a more diverse pool of people for your REU programs, given that everything is virtual, or has this not changed things?
I mean, our recruiting for our programs, it was all in place before the pandemic really hit. So we had to really pivot our programming. For next summer, they're already sort of encouraging us to plan our programs to be remote. Again, I don't know about the other universities. We're hoping that doesn't happen. But I do know that it was, in some sense, easier on a couple of students who, could stay at home and participate in the program. But I think for other students, it was actually more difficult because they didn't have a place to, really participate in the online modules is really all day. And that's hard to do if you're sort of living at home, you share a bedroom or, whatever the situation was.
I would say that on the recruiting part, that was very hard because one of the things that has worked for us very, very well has been this sort of using our young people as the recruiters. They go to the Houston Community College, they go to the University of Houston, they go to TSU, and they meet with several students, and the students talk to them, and that personal relationship sort of involve people to participate in the program. I think the virtual part sort of cuts that personal interaction, and I think has a negative impact on the program. Actually, I think that in general for our center, there has been a negative impact because the fact we had all these young people all housed in the same place, they're crossing each other in the corridor, they're talking to each other. I think we missed a lot of that because this sort of informal interactions and learning that's going. So in general, I think that has been one of the major impacts of the pandemics.
Thank you. We have another question from the chat from Srividya Iyer Biswas. Josh and Jose, how would you feel about asking postdocs and graduate students from other institutions if they would participate in virtual mentoring? That could be a win-win solution.
I think, as I said before, that's one direction we want to go. We want to sort of expand over the PoLS network and maybe other institutions that join us to try to maximize this impact. I think that Margie already made some comments about that. We feel that that's the direction to go. I think that our pool of applicants is enormous of good people and we can see to do that. We are already, because our center has diversified to Northeastern, we already sort of we're increasing our pool of 2 universities, but we feel like that to go. So that's one point I would love to see on the discussion. How can we have sort of synergize all our resources, both in recruiting and training, and get something that's larger than the sum? And I think we can do that.
Yeah,
I think that's a very good idea.
I think it's a very interesting idea. I think logistically it's hard. The larger you make the big group, for example, how do students find the right mentor? So if they come to your department or even the biophysics group in your department, which has 5 faculty, it's trivial, right? Like, what everyone does. University-wide, I don't know, there's 30 people in relevant-ish things. Maybe someone can know what's going on. Even, in the iPoLS network, now you have a student come, right? I mean, and it just gets harder the broader you make it. So, these big programs are possible. I just think they take a lot of resources, and you really need, dedicated paid people, staff, etc., who are really cataloging everything, right? Like the biggest effort I know of is the neuroscientists. I'm sure Simon was probably part of this, ran this gigantic worldwide summer school online this summer. And it was like truly amazing. Like they got TAs from all over the world and you had to apply and there was this fantastic thing. But my understanding, it was a huge effort and some individuals put in, you know, a really large amount of work to make it happen. And so, you know, these things are possible, but the larger you make the umbrella, just the more it costs in every kind of sense of that word. And you know, we need buy-in financially and administratively from, you know, a lot of different groups, I think, to make it happen.
But the reverse of what Srividya is saying is possible, right? Supposing she comes along and says, look, there's somebody in West Lafayette who is really good, but I don't have the infrastructure to show him or her how this process works. But either Jose or you or somebody else who have done this multiple times could say, yeah, you know, we could help you out both maybe financially if possible or otherwise. So that's possible, right? That doesn't take so
That's
much.
already possible, I think. But that, you know, that kind of selects amongst the people who know that we're here, et cetera. You know,
Yeah, that is true.
much smaller.
But to put on the discussion, that's what I think it's very important for actionable items. There are lots of things that are already possible informally, but what can we do formalize and actually be effective about it, right? And that's, I think, what I would like to come up with some take-home messages.
So, Jose, I have just a quick comment about some of these programs. Like, we have a lot of our tutorials that are online, or when we teach them are done on the cloud. So that's fine for the theoreticians. And I've even had some people use them and then teach it themselves. But what I'm noticing here is it's harder if this keeps up with us having, you know, not allowing people on site, is how to handle teaching anything to do with the labs and make those how to even do an online tutorial for them. Has anybody had any experience with that was successful?
Amen.
Oh, okay. Sounds, thanks.
As a real experimentalist, online experiments are not the real thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think so. You know, I mean, we've all struggled, like, you know, I'm part of this integrated science freshman teaching program. We've generated a full suite of year-long online labs. They are no real substitute, and we will throw them away as soon as COVID is over, right? They are only a stopgap measure until we can get people doing real hands-on research again.
Okay, thanks, guys.
So we are at time, but there is an interesting discussion in the chat about paying the mentors for the different initiatives, and maybe this is something that can be continued in the further discussion. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Diana. You did a great job.
Thanks, Diana.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. So
I think now
everybody come for a very exciting final section in 10 minutes. The students that have run the tables, be prepared. You're going to be the first ones to come up with some proposals before everybody in. So be prepared for the next section. Okay? Thank you.